Good evening. It is Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021, and I'd like to call to order the District of Sechelt regular council meeting. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Sechelt Nation. And we have an agenda in front of us. First of all, any declarations of conflict on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, are there any additions to be made to the agenda? Thank you. I'd look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And we have a proclamation tonight with regards to Toastmasters Month, February 2021. So whereas Toastmasters International, a nonprofit educational organization, is a leader in making effective oral communication a national and international reality for all persons. And whereas Toastmasters programs help people develop skills in speaking, listening, and other vital skills that enhance leadership potential and foster understanding. And whereas there are 4 active Toastmasters clubs on the Sunshine Coast that meet regularly to continue to promote the goals, vision, mission, and core values of Toastmasters International. And whereas Toastmasters International has designated February as Toastmasters Month. Now, therefore, I, Darnell Seegers, on behalf of the District of Sechelt Council, do hereby proclaim that February 2021 shall be known as Toastmasters Month in the District of Sechelt. All right. Many years ago, when I was going for my teaching degree, totally off topic, I was not comfortable speaking in front of people and thought, well, that didn't really work as a teacher. So I actually went and joined Toastmasters and did that for a while. So it's good. All right. Adoption of minutes of previous council meetings. We'll start with the minutes of the 3:30 p.m. regular council meeting of December 23rd, 2020, and this is for adoption. Look for someone to adopt the minutes. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions in these minutes? All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 5.2. This is the minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of January 20th. And this is for adoption. Look for someone to move adoption. Moved, seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And then minutes of the 3:30 p.m. regular council meeting of January 27th for adoption. Look for motion for adoption. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? All right, seeing none, and we have no committee meetings, no new business. We're moving right into business items. Item 10.1, road naming policy number 3.1.10. And I look for a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And over to Marina.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll just briefly outline that the policy provides guidance and a procedure for how the district selects and assigns road names within our jurisdiction. Road names contribute to our community's identity, our history, and the places, people, and things that we value. And from a practical perspective, road names establish order and consistency on the ground. And importantly, they provide that order for emergency services response. The community charter authorizes councils to assign a name or a number to a highway, i.e. a road. And that includes lanes, trails, bridges, and other public ways. And that's done by bylaw. The new policy contains where we didn't really have details in our old policy at all. It was basically just a few steps. So it was like 5 steps of a procedure. The new one contains selection criteria for names, definitions for different road types that are used, provide some clarification around renaming of roads, which are seldomly done, and procedures to see the process through, including referrals and notifications. So staff did look at some other areas for what they do for road naming policies. We looked at Kelowna, Edmonton, Vancouver, Richmond, View Royal on Vancouver Island, and some cities in the US and even Europe. So this is what we are suggesting as a policy in its draft form. And the recommendations are that the draft policy be presented as presented is referred to our neighboring jurisdictions, that is the Sechelt Nation, the Sunshine Coast Regional District, and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for their comments. And we are also interested in preparation for the next bylaw that we adopt for road names, because we currently have still a number of names left from our previous bylaw, which was adopted in 2018. We're proposing to put it out to the public and get some involvement in designing, or some involvement from the public in compiling a reserve list that could be used and brought forward to council for adoption in a future bylaw. And that's it. And see if you have questions.
Council, any questions? Councillor Lamb.
So if I go out and spend $1 million buying a piece of land, and I want to subdivide it, and the district makes me put a road through there, and I pay all my DCCs and all my fees that I pay to the district, then if I want to put my mother's name on that road, I'm not allowed to do that? Is that the way this is going to be?
The way we're looking at it right now, and the way it is right now, is we have a bylaw with some reserve names. So that is currently the situation. The policy is just establishing the criteria so that moving forward, we have a consistent and well understood mechanism. For private roads, like strata developments, the local governments wouldn't have jurisdiction over those roads. So we're suggesting that oftentimes developers will call us and ask what road names they can use. And this can provide guidance for some consistency, but not for private strata roads. They could be named basically anything that works for emergency response, I would imagine.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, so if I wanted to put my mother's name on a road, I'm not allowed to do that. Is that correct? You're going to give me a list of names that I have to choose. Is that the way this is? And then you're going to waste a whole bunch of staff time picking through that, and then going out to get responses from the SCRD or from the fire department, from
No, that's not what's proposed. It would be council that votes on it. Yeah. It's not staff coming up with the names. It could be staff suggesting names. It could be the community suggesting names that go on a reserve list. Mm-hmm. But council makes the final decision on that. And for renaming applications, I'll just point out that there is a requirement under the Municipal Act to have 2/3 of council with an affirmative vote for renaming an existing road. But for new roads, it's council's decision. This would be the policy that would lay out the expectations, I suppose.
Okay, any other questions or comments by councillors? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Not my usual technology setup. So this being an update of the policy and soliciting new names, in reference to Councillor Lamb's comments there, how long has something resembling this system been in place in the district of Sechelt for a developer, not just picking a family member's name, for example?
My answer to that would be that our previous road naming policy was established in 2000, and it did not specify how that would happen. There were no selection criteria. So this is criteria that, like I said, we've looked at other, so council directed staff to come up with a policy, and we went and looked at what other areas do and are suggesting this as a reasonable approach for a place like the District of Sechelt. And it would be a council policy, so.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you. I would like to just jump in and just talk about one of the other reasons we like to do is about consistency and clarity. So if a developer mother's name was Anna, Betty, or Pam, for example, 3 roads that are off of Nessman Road, we wouldn't be wanting to duplicate those names. There's many roads containing arbutus, so if that's your favorite tree, it's kind of off the table now as well, right? So we're trying to do a couple of things here, create some consistency and safety for emergency response, but also come together, create some different types of themes, groups of names that can be selected by the community, endorsed by council, essentially to provide some parameters around these decision making.
Okay, seeing no further, yeah. Marina, go ahead, and then we'll go to Councilor McLean.
I did want to bring up one suggested change to the policy that was brought up from a comment received from the public. It's basically under the section of the policy called making a road name application. Number 4, I felt it was probably for clarity better to include number 4, that the district may also propose names for new roads or initiate the renaming of a road. And I was thinking that we should add in after that. This is about notifications. So for district initiated renaming, notifications will be sent to all affected property owners and residents, allowing them up to 30 calendar days to respond to staff before the bylaw is presented to council for consideration. And the purpose of that was just to clarify that for other renaming applications, if they're initiated by the public, they are accompanied by a petition, but if the district initiates it, that we would do notification. That was intended, but was not clear the way it was written.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Councilor McLean.
Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of what has been proposed here. I think it's a good balanced approach between developers and the community. When we name a road, it's essentially permanent. It forms the identity of where you live. So to be associated with a name of a developer's parent, for example, we have a lot of those already in Sechelt. We mentioned the Anna, Betty, Pam example. There's Kevin's, there's Carter, there's Tyler. There's all sorts of ones out there that are first names. Those don't really don't create a sense of place. And I would rather try and get some creative names, try and recognize our history, try and recognize the unique geography that we have in Sechelt, and present this list and make those options for developers to be able to choose. Because I believe the intent of the policy is we have this list and then developers can choose. So they still do get a bit of a say, but just because you're building a development doesn't mean you get to slap your name on it forever. I think the community owns street names and the community should maintain some kind of control over what our streets are named. So I think this approach is pretty good.
I'm going to speak in favor as well. If you look on page 19, it talks about fire, RCMP, ambulance services, Canada Post, registrar of voters, right, utility companies. So these are all companies that it's important to them that there's distinct, unique names for areas so that they can provide the service that's required and that we're looking to them to provide. So this provides some, so that the work gets done ahead of time. We have a list of names that have been vetted. All of these organizations are okay with those names. They know that they can provide the service that they are mandated to provide. And we have a list of names that they can then choose from when they go to do developments. So I'm in favor of this. And the names will come back to us prior to, like the list will come to us after the community's weighed in and everything else. And we will get to say, okay, put these on the list. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I'm almost ready to move the recommendations. I've got one thing I want to add in, and that I also want to refer this to the community associations. But I just want to clarify with Marina or the corporate officer. We've got in here recommendation 2 that the naming policy as presented. So I'm wondering if at this point it's as amended, because Marina had a couple of suggestions there for clarification.
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay, in that case, I will move a form of recommendation 2 that the draft road naming policy as amended be referred to the Seashelt Nation, SCRD, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and Seashelt area community associations for comment. And recommendation 3 that staff be directed to design and trial a process for soliciting community input on new road names towards creating a reserve list.
Thank you. And it's been seconded. Any other comments or questions? Councillor McLean and then Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I just have one technical question. If we go to page 23 on the agenda, item 7 under selection criteria, corporate or business names will not be considered. So just for clarity, if a corporation is named ABC Developments, they can't name the street ABC Road, but they could, if their developed marketing name is XYZ, they can name it XYZ Road. Is that correct? Like, because that happens quite often. They have a marketing name for the development.
The intent of that number 7 was that we're not designing our community based on corporate or business names. And again, that's for you to decide. So it would just, anything that it's to guide the names. So if you're weighing the pros and cons of a name and somebody feels that it doesn't meet that criteria, then you have that discussion and you make the final decision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lamb.
So I just want to get this straight. So the planning department is going to make up a list of names, or there will be a list of names created. And then a developer comes in and he gets to choose from that, or he gets to bring his own name forward for the road if he wants to. But then does the staff have to take that name and go out to all these people for approval and to the community and around it? Is that what I'm hearing?
So the purpose of the policy is to streamline the naming. If a developer suggests a name when we're at the point of creating a bylaw, or even for a single road, it can still be considered. Then if it meets these criteria and is generally within the guidelines of this policy, then the bylaw could be adopted. I'm not sure if I remember the first part of your question or if I answered it.
The big question is if I came in and I wanted it First Street, do you have to take that out to the TELUS and Hydro and all that to get their approval, or to the community?
No.
And just, it can all be done in-house, so we don't have to, we're not wasting a whole bunch of staff time.
No,
No.
that was only for renaming, because some of those agencies might be affected in some way that we're not aware of. But if these guidelines are followed, like if we put out a call to the community and say, these are the criteria, come up with some names, and then we collect them all. If they generally follow those names, and when you're reviewing the bylaw presentation for that list, then you would adopt them if you felt that they met those criteria.
Okay.
Okay, I think what Councillor Lamb is saying though is once we've got that list together, if a developer comes to town and says, I want to develop this piece of property and I want to use this street name and it's not on our list, then what happens?
I think you could entertain it separately. Because there's nothing in here that says you have to adopt a list. It's just to keep it coming so that you're not doing it every time. Council could adopt them one at a time as well.
Councillor Lamb, does that help?
Well, it helps. I just hope you guys don't want to change the name of the road that I named. That's all. That's the most important thing.
Mr.
If it meets the criteria.
Allen? Mr. Allen?
I would say that the intent here is not to rename existing streets. I mean, that may in a very unusual circumstance occur, but that's certainly not the intent. But the benefit of this, and we can provide some clarity in the policy process as we go through referral here, but the benefit is that it provides a pool of names. If there's a name that hasn't been thought of and it is deemed appropriate, we can present it to council. So it brings it forward, puts it in the public realm, so it's neither singularly my choice nor singularly a developer's choice, but if there's a new name, it can be brought forward for consideration. And I think that's the benefit of having a policy like this.
So just one more quick thing. So it's going to cost me $500 to put a name on a road.
That was the suggested fee for renaming an existing road.
For
So if we want
renaming.
it, yeah, because there's a lot of administrative and notifications and that would go along with that, and address changes.
I think we should raise the price then.
Well, I think we should raise it to 1,500 for you.
Okay, let's get on it.
We have a recommendation on the floor. Does anybody need to hear that back? Or are you clear on what we're voting on? You good? All right, all those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 10.2.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, you never asked for opposed.
Okay, is anybody opposed? Would you like that recorded?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Item 10.2, zoning bylaw 580, summary of pre-draft public engagement. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Allen.
Great, thank you. Noting that this is a 26-page report and it is presented for information, I will give you the benefit of knowing that a decision does not need to be made this evening. So this report here forms a basis for our progress in the zoning bylaw review. So on behalf of the planning and communications team, I'm pleased to present this report to you this evening for review. And so it's for council's review. Take some time to consider it. Staff will also be using the content we have here in this report in the background as we take the next steps to complete the draft of the new zoning bylaw. So in late 2020, staff commenced a COVID-19 appropriate engagement plan. So this included virtual meetings, targeted meetings with community associations, business groups. We conducted online surveys, 5 of them ran concurrently. And then we had a public information meeting on Zoom as well in early December with approximately 80 people in attendance. So the intent of this engagement at this time was to raise the profile of this project, to let people know that we are in fact considering renewing our zoning bylaw. We know this, staff knows this, council knows this, but we wanted to take the next step and start that process with the community, with community associations, and have some meaningful engagement ahead of writing and presenting the bylaw. And so what we heard in those 3 months is going to be very useful for us. And so ultimately, as I've mentioned to you before, the intent is to bring in a new zoning bylaw, which is going to modernize our land use regulations as well as implement key policies contained within the OCP. So in order to kickstart the engagement with folks, we broke it down to these 5 topic areas, which are the subject of the surveys. And I'll note that certain things, the height of buildings and how you measure grade and so forth, those are all on the table as well. And we're happy to have conversations with those that feel they are interested in engaging on that level, house builders, designers, and so forth. But for the public and our initial conversations, we settled on urban agriculture, agricultural land reserve uses, residential density, home-based business, and short-term rental. So those formed a lot of our conversations and our feedback. And so the report you have in front of you today will summarize that. It also details our advertising efforts, what we did in terms of newspaper, radio, social media, and so forth to get the word out to folks. It provides summaries of our meetings. We met with SCAF, the Sechelt Community Association Forum. We met with individual community associations after the SCAF meeting upon request. The Sechelt Downtown Business Association briefly met one day with Chamber of Commerce. And these groups are all expecting us to come back to them again when we have more information. There's a summary of the survey in here, as well as next steps and what our plan is. And also, attachment 1 includes a number of pie charts. These are the pie charts that relate to the multiple choice questions that were contained within the 5 surveys. And so this gives council and the public a chance to peruse a summary of the results. So I will say there's a wealth of information here in this report to consider. All of it's going to be used to form the basis of our review, but it doesn't drive a decision at this point. This is just for information. So our recommendation is for council to receive this report and the information contained within, and to endorse staff taking the next step into writing the bylaw. And we will come back, we'll present it again to council when ready. And then that time we'll be making recommendations for future engagement to the community, future referrals to key technical and governmental agencies and so forth, in order to continue to take the right path towards completion of this project. And I thank you, and available for questions, of course.
Council, does anybody have any questions? Councillor Toth.
Sorry, I'm just having another review of the pie charts right now. I'm looking at page 39, survey question 4. I'm trying to make sense of whether the numbers, like the percentage numbers, or the pie chart is correct, because I believe they're not correctly labeled. I just wanted to clarify that for my own purposes here.
Yeah, these are auto-generated from SurveyMonkey, and perhaps labels swapped. Fair to say that 87% of people do not own a farm. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I have one question for the bottom of page 31 under communications. It says you've compiled an email list based on community association and business group contacts, as well as members of the public who've either contacted us or attended the information meeting. If others wanted to get onto that list, so they're interested, maybe didn't attend any of the sessions, we don't have their contact information, how could they reach out to us and get on an email distribution list to get updates about when this, when something's coming out, or the next steps in it, or anything?
Sure, great question. The best way to do that would be to send an email to our planning department account, which is planning@sechelt.ca, and with a particularly helpful with an appropriate subject header about zoning bylaw 580, and we can receive and respond and filter accordingly.
Okay. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, just on how the data is presented, I recognize that it's just a direct download from SurveyMonkey, so pie charts aren't really appropriate for multiple choice questions. So beyond what Councillor Toth mentioned, there's some wackiness in the survey, in the pie charts. But my specific question is, are we able to see some of the freeform answers? Because I think there's going to be a lot of really good nuggets of wisdom within those. So I'd really like to be able to see those through an email or at a council meeting at some point.
Well, I think what we were trying to do is aggregate the response, provide summaries. contained within the good nuggets are sometimes comments which may be derogatory and not appropriate for sharing on public agendas and so forth. So I was looking at, as a comparable, the survey that the province and the Sechelt Nation are doing, where they have a bit of a stipulation about only appropriate in terms of non-offensive language will be used and shared. And so sometimes the overall printout does contain content we receive from folks that's just simply not appropriate to share on public agendas. Unfortunately, it's very much the minority in this case, but it is absolutely our intention to fairly summarize and present the information we've received.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, one other point on page 31. I think you wrote this report a little while ago. It says underneath where it says the next phase of the engagement, right underneath that it says, well, there's no firm timeline at this point. Item 1, which is the bylaw drafting, is expected to take several months this winter and into early spring and is dependent upon the availability of staff time. Maybe this is winter, could be.
Felt like spring today.
I know. So I know you guys have a heavy workload. Do you have any kind of timeline for a draft? I mean, are we looking at summer? Or are we looking at, I think we're just anxious, right? We're just anxious to get this going. I mean, and I know you are too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And in fact, I did use basically that same kind of description when speaking with staff this week about our need to get this out. So it may result in, we have a list of items that we need to finish and focus on and breaking it into teams. And some of our planning staff are more adept at the grade and height. Others are more adept at the urban agriculture or the mapping.
Mhm.
And it's difficult, of course, in our work environment, not being able to pile into a meeting room to hash these out. So we're gonna have to break into a bit of teams and so forth. So I see that occurring in February and March. I can't say that first council meeting in April, this will be on the agenda, but we're certainly targeting this spring. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, I think we also are hearing from the development community, and I see the impact on staff of the old bylaw that we have. It is so old that it in itself is causing issues inside of our whole development community and for our staff, because there are many things that just don't exist in our bylaw. So everything's, an exception. And when you get to that kind of situation, it just creates more working time for everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say if this bylaw were a house, you probably wouldn't want to renovate it. You'd want to knock it down.
Yes. Councillor McLean.
Well, it's not just our development community, it's also the community in general.
Yes.
It's really hard to have some kind of expectation about what your neighborhood is going to develop into when the zoning bylaw is all over the place and it's unaligned with the OCP. So when the two of them mix, you don't know what your neighborhood is going to develop into. And we need to get that fixed to provide that certainty to residents of Sechelt as well, not just the development community.
Yeah. Perfect. All eyes are on you. Right. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the individual results too much, but I am going to just highlight one that really stood out to me. Bottom of page 50 regarding short-term rentals. In general, the short-term rental survey was pretty diverse. However, I found one key point of alignment, which is that 89% of people believe there should be an operator, either local or have a contact or on-site or have a contact nearby. So that could be a really quick win that has a high degree of community support when we talk about making maybe a small change to the short-term rental bylaw in the interim before we develop a whole bylaw on its own. Just because those two, the orange and the blue, and combined create quite a high proportion of residents.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Toth.
I'm just wondering if there's any benefit or value to forwarding this to our APC for their information, feedback, consideration.
You bet. In fact, I pointed it out last night at our APC meeting that would be on the agenda for this evening. My preference, of course, is to present to council first and then filter from there. But happy to put the report itself on the March agenda for receipt and discussion.
Would you like a motion to that effect, that this be referred to APC?
Sure.
Then I'll move that.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded, all in favor? Thank you. All right, any other further questions or comments? I'm interested to see what you come back with regards to short-term rentals and next steps. All right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to reports from councillors. And order, Councillor Scott, Kuster, Rowe, McLean, Toth, and Lamb. Councillor Scott.
Nothing to report on my end. Just working.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
Last couple weeks, I attended the Youth Advisory Committee meeting. It's the first meeting of the year. And everyone just gave updates on status of all the different programs that were going on. I just have to say that the people who are supporting our youth and their families is amazing on the coast, and especially during this, our pandemic. It's much needed and much appreciated. I also attended library board meeting. So it's my kind of second one. So I'm just getting, learning about all the different programs that Leanne and the library staff do, which is great. And they talked about how they'll be presenting budget requests. I think they were at SCRD this week. And they will be having their AGM coming up. Date's still up in the air, but I will let everyone know once we know that. And they are definitely looking for new members, at least 2 they're hoping for. And again, I attended APC last night, first official meeting with new chair, and 2 new members were added, which definitely added a new dynamic to the APC committee. So that's all I have to report.
Yeah, go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, just on the library board. Are there any skill sets that they may be looking for? And if not, could you try and look into that at the next meeting and report back? Because I'd love to advertise on their behalf and try and get them some new blood in there, or not new blood, some experienced people, and as much support as I can provide to the library.
Yeah, one point to note for their AGM, or for their potential board members, is they need to be nominated prior to the meeting. Nominations are not accepted at the meeting, because part of the criteria is current board members have to actually sign nomination papers. All right, Councillor Rowe.
Not too much, really busy at work. Just preparing for, we'll be looking at grants in the next 6 weeks or so, and have an upcoming meeting with the steering committee for the poverty reduction plan. But otherwise, it's been pretty quiet.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
I attended a Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society board meeting. They have recently hired an administrator. So this will be their first staff member. So Chris Newmeyer, who used to be their vice president, has stepped down from the board and will now be acting in a staff capacity. So what this does is provides a huge organizational boost to the Affordable Housing Society. And I'm hoping it will allow them to be more open to proposals from developers and from other people in the community trying to look to get projects moving. And Chris is a great guy, and he's already made a huge organizational shift in the month that he's been there so far.
That's perfect. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I don't really have anything to report other than I join you tonight from the traditional terry of the Phoenix people, which were actually declared extinct in Canada in 1956, although they remain very active in the United States. And so that's sort of the territory between Osoyoos and Castlegar. Other than that, I don't actually have any council business to report.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yes, I attended the Water Advisory Select Committee this week. And we had an update on the wells that they've been working with. And anyways, the Langdale well has excellent water, and it produces very well. The Great Creek well, it doesn't give enough volume, and so what they're looking at doing is seeing if they already have an intake in the creek, and they're going to see if they can raise that intake to get the volume they need. And then they've done a test well at Marianne Park, and everything's excellent there. There's good volume, the whole thing, but it also taps into the Gibson's aquifer and the Church Road aquifer. So that's a huge aquifer down in that area. Anyways, they figure between the three wells that there could be a potential to meet the water deficit for up until 2035. And then the big thing was that right now is the WASAC. The members on the committee are a very well-rounded group, and they've sort of asked that they be more involved in the decision making as we move forward, because right now basically all the decisions are being made they're asking the committee for is approval. And then the biggest thing was just wanting to make sure that there's better public information. So that's it for me so far. Thank you.
Thank you. So what have I been up to? ICE-T board. So the Island Coastal Economic Trust, the provincial government approached them and requested they change their boundary and include some of the Gulf Islands. So the boundary change has been completed. Maps and stuff have been updated on their website. They have not been provided additional funds, so they are pursuing some of that to see if it's possible to get some additional funds, because they know there's going to be demand for funds, and now it's diluted with the additional members. Last week, Director Kern and I did some radio ads for 91.7. So we take radio ads. I understand they're playing on the radio now. They're focusing on our public works, our parks departments, and on snow removal. So I haven't heard them yet, but I've had a few staff members, a few people in the community say that they sound good. So we did good, Director Kern. Last week, the SCRD hosted a local government construction industry meeting. So by invitation, Mayor Beamish and I attended with our CAOs, meeting with government to bridge the gap. So as we know, there's been, over the years, there have been not great communication and not a lot of understanding of each other for what the other does. So this is actually to start having those conversations. We're going to have regular conversations. There are, I think it's 5 builders on the Sunshine Coast who've been here, I think minimum 20 years, and 1 architect who's been here for a lot of years as well. So 2-hour meeting, basically just breaking the ice at this point, but we're looking at what processes can we change or impact that would assist them and give them an understanding of what it is required that we do on our side, because some of our processes are foreign to them and causes them some frustration. So we're going to work on that piece. Director Toth will probably talk about SCRD budget in his SCRD report. So I won't say anything on that. CBC National, I did an interview today with CBC National. They wanted to get out of the downtown east side and thought the Sunshine Coast would be a good place to talk about opioid overdoses. So basically what I told them is we're like every other rural community across the province, that we have the same issues that they have in the urban centers, but we don't necessarily have the resources that they have there. And we need resources in our own communities to serve our own people. So the piece will air next week on the national, on CBC. So if I get a link, I will make sure I post that out and let you see what I said. Local Government Leadership Academy conference started today. Nora Young from CBC did the keynote address today, and she was talking about data. Because one of the things that this has really shown us through COVID here is the importance of access to the internet. And then we're really coming to the fore is what kind of data is being collected and shared and what's it being used for. So she talked about how we're looking to become more responsive to the community, more resilient, and we use artificial intelligence in places. But digital strategies raise questions of equality of access, privacy, and ethics. So she looked at some of the big picture changes in the future, how to prepare for those changes, and some of the pitfalls. So it's one actually that I want to go back and listen to again, because I think there's more to be gleaned out of that as we are moving forward. And for council and the community and staff, the RCMP is looking to put together their annual performance plan, and they would like input from us by March 1st as to what our priorities are that they will look at putting together inside of that performance plan when they put it out. Facebook Live tomorrow, there is a tour at noon of the Public Works and Parks facilities. That's Thursday the 4th at noon. So you could watch live or go later and check that out. And I know John Devison will be there, and Kern Dillon will also be featured on the Facebook Live. I'm on the Local Government Show tomorrow night. That's our monthly event. Then for the community, Monday at the 8th at noon and Tuesday the 9th at 5 p.m. we have Zoom sessions set up for community input with regards to the budget. So check those out. It's Monday the 8th at noon and Tuesday the 9th at 5 p.m. And we'd love to hear your feedback on what's been presented around sewer at this point. And we will be having other sessions once the other pieces of the budget are presented. That's my report. Councillor Toth, over to you for SCRD.
Thank you. My report is attached. I'd like to thank Councillor Lamb for knocking off what I thought was the most important thing on that report, which was the water results, the wells and Grey Creek and what have you. So I don't have to talk about that because he did. We also did receive a delegation or a presentation from Tetra Tech looking at disposal options for the Sunshine Coast going forward. And we're really going to have to look at both siting a new landfill and also waste export at the same time. Because with what we have left on our landfill, we don't have time to start down one road, get denied, and then go down the other road. So we're going to have to look at both at the same time. There were some potential sites in Half Moon Bay that have been identified, and so we'll have to sort of move forward with next steps on further analysis of the sites and what have you. We may not have a new landfill by the time that ours is set to close. So we may end up having to export waste for a time, regardless of how we could proceed. I wasn't prepared to speak to budget.
Just that we had the days, yeah.
That's an ongoing event. Yeah, we had Monday and Tuesday. We almost got everything finished on Tuesday, but we got bogged down on street lighting. So we'll be finishing up on Friday. I'm gonna try and put together something fairly compact and comprehensive to go into my next report for budget, but it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough both to communicate this budget and to justify, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of items in there that can't be deferred, they can't be postponed, they can't be canceled, and it's going to be expensive. And I'm not looking forward to trying to communicate that and to justify it, because even for myself, I can't. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report. One thing I did want to say with the Policing and Public Safety Committee that the mayor mentioned there was that the RCMP are looking for that feedback. I don't know if it's something we want to talk about at a committee of the whole to put together as a council, a list of 3 or 4 recommendations, or if we want to try and just totally inundate Staff Sergeant Hallam with everybody's individual suggestions. So I'm not sure how we would like to proceed on that particular item there.
Okay, well, maybe I'll reach out to Staff Sergeant Hallam and ask her how she'd like that to come to her from us. Okay. All right. Correspondence. We have 2 pieces of correspondence. Yes, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to correct you on something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Just so we can get that out quickly. You mentioned there's a budget meeting on Monday, February 8th at noon. That is correct.
Yeah.
On the 9th, it is a federal budget meeting.
Oh, in the evening?
So, in the evening.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So it's hosted by our MP, but that's not a
Perfect.
District of Sechelt event.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like it when you guys correct me. That's awesome. So council correspondence, 2 pieces of correspondence for receipt. I'd look for someone to receive, motion to receive, moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. The first item of correspondence on here, I just wanted to mention, this was a letter that was sent to us from Ross Muirhead with regards to the community forest engagement process and cut blocks. It was also sent to the community forest at the same time, and they have responded to his questions that he brought up in here. And I believe all of council has already received that correspondence, right? Perfect. And then the second one is a Chamber of Commerce letter, Sechelt Chamber letter, and it's marked for action. What would council like to do with the letter? Councillor Toth.
I don't have a particular action in mind. I just wanted to compliment you on your letter that you sent in, or that the newspaper published parts of there addressing some of the issues that were in this letter. I can't see us selling any amount of Block 7 for anywhere near enough money to build a municipal hall and our public works facility and be able to rehouse the library, or if the library's got to move into commercial space, what kind of tax increase is that going to take to fund? So I think this is an interesting concept, but I can't support this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I appreciate the innovative approach that the Chamber's trying to make, but fundamentally, I am against selling District of Sechelt property. We have an asset here in the property that we have, that Town Hall sits on. Town Hall itself, the building is an asset. It's only 25 years old. It's got plenty of life in it. But just the land, we should not be selling our land. We should be holding on to it so we can use it for the public good. If we want to build housing, I believe last year Councillor Lamb talked about imposing some kind of tax, which would build a housing fund. We could buy the land with that tax, but I suspect the Chamber would be against that as well. So I think this proposal, it's innovative, but our approach with the operations center is proven. It is responsible, and it is the way forward we need for our staff and the operations of the District of Sechelt.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, I'm just going to concur with Matt. We have very little land. I just cannot support selling it off. You know, I don't think we should be getting rid of our land. We don't have enough as it is. It's an asset, and you know, I appreciate the out of the box thinking for sure, and encourage that, but it's not something that I would support.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to weigh in? All right, seeing no further comments or questions, staff, are there any emergency items to be brought forward?
No, your worship, there isn't.
Thank you. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.